This is an uncomfortable topic. I don't want to talk about it. It's very personal and it's unavoidable. It's completely unavoidable. So we're going there today. That's where we're going. And hold on, because it's maybe it's just uncomfortable for me. I don't know. Welcome back to Far From Eden. If this is your first time stopping by, it might be a little weird because this is going to be personal about me. But we have been talking about things that I can even hear my voice shaking. We've been talking about things, reasons why I think the way I think. And while I do have, some earlier videos, from basically when I started this channel, explaining how I got here, there's been so much discovery on my part about these issues. It's sort of like just when you think you've taken that I don't want to say the word because I don't know which words YouTube likes and which ones they don't, but it's not the blue pill. When you take the other one, you think you're done and you're like, wow, that's a lot. I know a lot. And then you just keep learning. And now I realize I just keep learning more and more every day about, even if it's the extent of the issues that men are facing in our country, in all of Western society, really. The catastrophe that marriage has become because divorce is rampant, accusations are rampant. So a big component of how I got to believe and know the things that I do and say on this channel that I share with you is because of my health or lack thereof. We'll just get into it. It's hard for me to think that people actually want to hear about me. So it's uncomfortable, and I'm not one that talks about myself constantly. But I know that that's not how most people of my gender act. So I was officially diagnosed with multiple sclerosis on June 8th of the year 2000. I didn't really know what was going on. I was just getting over a case of mono, and it seemed to be hanging on, and I couldn't figure it out. But then there were weird symptoms like, tingling and weakness. And I thought, I don't know if this is that. Then my vision went blurry. And honestly, I should have been more alarmed than I was at the time. We'll talk a little bit about why I wasn't in a minute when I have to do a flashback. I was having blurry vision. I was having, like I said, weakness. When I would go up the stairs, I'd be like, God, why is this one leg? Like, it was my right leg. Why was it not, I didn't want to push up the stairs as much. I thought that's odd. And I was really tired and, but I was trying to push through, and I figured, well, mono is why I'm tired. But the blurry vision was like, I don't think so. No. Happened to be laying on the couch one day and just exhausted, not feeling well, blurry vision, neck hurting, just all kinds of pain and weird symptoms. And I'm flipping channels. We didn't have many stations, I don't think. And there was this weird, almost like a public access show, and it was a call-in show. They were talking about, calling in and talking about their symptoms, and the person fielding the calls and answering the questions was a doctor. And the reason I paused on that channel is I caught it at just a time where the caller was talking about their symptoms. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Not to do the thing where you hear all the symptoms and you're like, that's what I have. because this was before, WebMD, and we were all diagnosing ourselves from Google. But I was like, whatever they're talking about, man, that is what is going on with me. And I was like eagerly awaiting. What were they going to say? Like, talk about the disease, name the disease so I know what it is. And I don't know, within the next 5 minutes or so, they were talking multiple sclerosis. And I kind of froze. I just froze. And I was like, okay. And I mean, it's clear as can be to me right now. Anyway, I continued to listen, because then I was looking for anything that didn't sound right. Like, no, just being paranoid. But it just resonated. And I don't remember what the next step from that was, but I remember the next scene in my head is I knew I needed to get in to see a neurologist. So, and I knew that I didn't need, to get a special, what do they call it, referral to get a specialist. So I just, I was gonna go ahead and get a doctor locally and have an appointment. So I did that. And also I had a client at the time who had a horse with me, at least one horse, maybe two. And I happened to be talking about symptoms, what have you. Oh, I had talked to his wife about my symptoms earlier. And then I saw him, and he was talking about, your neurologist, you need to see a neurologist, you probably should get a specialist. And he was talking about maybe he could help me get in somewhere a little sooner. And he seemed very concerned. But he was also doing the thing where he's being very concerned, but he's clearly not saying everything that he's thinking, right? And I said to him, you're thinking multiple sclerosis, right? And he's like, awkward. Yes. And I said, I know. I understand. Anyway, cut to, June 8th of that year, which was a few months later. And I had already had the MRI and all of that. And June 8th was the time I was going to come in, and he was going to tell me what the results were. And it was basically like, there was no question. I know that for some people, they go for years and years, test, and it's inconclusive, and they're not sure. They seem sure right away. And got a specialist, because at the time, I was not super suspicious of the medical industry. I was a little bit suspicious. I knew that doctors weren't God. I knew that, they don't really know you. And I knew that they like to feel like they know everything. That's about it. I just had a healthy skepticism of doctors and their egos. That was basically it. Glad I had that at the time. That way I didn't digest everything they told me as gospel, because that would have been absolutely terrifying and devastating. So, found out I had MS in 2000. So that was nearly 24 years ago. It's about 24 years ago if I think about when, the symptoms started. Why would this matter? How does this shape me? How does this shape my thoughts? Or my, sorry, I have to just get something to support my back a little bit more. That's why I always lean forward. It's my back being not quite strong enough. So I'm just gonna do this. Okay. So it was very aggressive. I mean, like I said, my vision was blurry. My walking was compromised. I could still walk. Most of the time people couldn't tell. Once in a while I might take an odd step, and people are like, oh, are you okay? And I'm like, oh yeah, I just have a bad back, which is also true. But, if you're a horse trainer, oops, I don't want that on there. If you're a horse trainer, you don't really want people knowing you have MS because you're like, they're not going to think I'm capable. And you're not really sure how to tell people yet, or if it's even appropriate to, all the rest of it. But so I had that diagnosis. So for nearly 24 years, I have lived the life of a disabled person. I figured out in about 2002, 2003, 2002, I think, that I couldn't jump anymore. I was doing a kids camp, a horse camp, and I thought, it would be fun. Let's on lunch, let's do some double Dutch jump rope. I used to do that when I was a kid. So we had these ropes that we used to do groundwork on the horses, and I was so excited. And then I was like, I'm going to show them, and I went to jump in, and like there was no jump. I couldn't jump. And I don't know when the ability to jump left, because how often as an adult are you trying to jump? But I knew that day I couldn't. And I don't remember when running went away, although I remember the year before, in 1999, I was showing a horse in hand, so I was leading them, think like dog show when they're running along with the dog. I was doing that, and running just seemed impossible. It was almost like a weird, almost fake run, but I was wearing those tall boots that equestrians wear, and it was a little muddy, so I thought, okay, well, that's probably all it is. So honestly, I don't know the last time I was able to run even was. Could have been 25 years ago. Could have been that day at the horse show, a year before I was even diagnosed. The point is, a disease like MS, when it is aggressive and disabling, humbles you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It humbles you. When you have bladder issues and issues like that, that's humbling. So I was 22 when I was diagnosed. And I obviously, I didn't have extra energy to do anything. I didn't have extra energy to even have friendships. I was engaged at that time. I had been engaged since I was 19. So I was engaged at 19, 20, 21, and 22, I was diagnosed. And so it's not like I was living a life of partying, and this all ended that. What it did is it humbled me. The pain that's involved with my particular case, every case is different, but the pain that's involved and the fatigue that's involved that you cannot caffeinate your way out of. You can't sleep and rest enough to get rid of it. It tells you no. This disease says no. You're not going to have that. You're not going to get to do that. You're going to go lay down, and you're going to be in pain, and you're going to have to just suffer through it. There's no manipulating your way out of it. There's no anything. And you know what? The other thing a lot of people do, and I understand, when they get a diagnosis, a lot of times their response is, why me, right? I didn't have that response because why not me? Why I already had the opinion like bad things happen to good people. Not that I'm saying I was good, but I'm just saying it's not, karma isn't real. It's not, well, I was good, so this happened. And all the Christian churches that are like, just pray and you'll be cured, like the whole Joel Osteen idea. No. Look, there are kids with cancer, okay? There are people starving in the world. It isn't because they're bad or because they didn't pray enough or what have you. It's because this world is sick and full of sin, and other people can, make decisions that affect others. So yeah, it's not good people get good stuff and bad people get bad stuff. That's not how it works, and I've always known that. So I got it, and I didn't think, why me? But you deal with it day by day by day, and it's basically a life sentence. So you go, why me? Because I'm not special. I'm not, it's not that I don't deserve this. I mean, nobody deserves MS. I suppose we can think of people that we would like to exact vengeance on, but God said vengeance is mine. So, it's not something I would wish on my worst enemy. But I've dealt with it day in and day out. There's not a day that happens that I'm like, oh, I forgot. Diagnosed in 2000, started using a cane in 2006. I got my first cane for Christmas in 2005. It was a really cool one with the horse on it, and you unscrewed it, had a sword inside, and it was neat. And my mom got it for me. It was bittersweet. She said, I just don't, I don't want you to not go somewhere or, have a scary incident where, you're walking along and your legs suddenly don't work, which happened to me earlier that year in October, was it? Something like that. I had a situation where I was walking along, and it was actually at a horse show, but it was at like the vendor hall, and I was walking along, and all of a sudden, like, my legs froze, and I'm standing there, and there's people walking both directions, and I wasn't with anybody right there in the moment, and my legs were just frozen, and I was like, I really need to sit down. But I don't want to sit down in the middle of everybody walking right here, so we're like a hallway. But I can't move. So I kind of stood there and willed myself. I saw like a little area, and I thought, if I can just get to that like wall, then I'll just have a seat right there and regroup. And it was after that my mom got me that cane. I had been living with my mom too. That's the other thing, is like, it was so bad. In my 20s, let me backtrack. Sorry. That fiance, like I said, got engaged at 19, ill-advised, not because of my age, but because that person was not who he pretended to be. He absolutely put on an act because I had a family that had money, which meant opportunity for him. And I wish my dad had said, absolutely not. But my dad was working in another country when it all got started, and my mom was very fine with it all. So obviously that's not the story that we're dealing with, but that was the circumstance I was in. Now, the little sort of subplot there is, he ended up breaking up with me that year. Some point later in that summer. It was in July, actually. It was in July. So I was diagnosed in June. He broke up with me in July. And I don't remember what he said to me was the reason. I know we fought a lot. I can't remember what he even said, but I do know that my brother-in-law went over there, when I say over there, over to the barn when he was packing up his stuff. My brother-in-law went over there to make sure that he wasn't taking anything that belonged to me. And my ex-fiance told my brother-in-law that he broke up with me because I had multiple sclerosis and I was, quote, holding him back. So I'm not one of the women that are just gonna say, oh, he broke up with me because of my disability. Just because I'm assuming that, but maybe it was the way you responded to your disability. Maybe it wasn't the disability at all. Because I learned later that that's not how men are at all. They don't leave because you're injured or hurt. I mean, I'm sure there are some that do, but by and large, that's not what they do. That would be something the other the women folk would do more often. Not all of them. Sometimes they do stay, but more often than not, it's the men that stay. Of course, when he broke up with me, and then that was the reason, I thought, well, no one's going to want me. And I can't blame them. That's what I thought back then. No one's going to want me, and I can't blame them because, I mean, I don't want to deal with this. Why would anybody else want to deal with it? And certainly if I loved somebody, the last thing I want to do is say, here, have some MS. Why don't you, just by dealing with it? Because if you do have MS and it's, and it affects your life as much as it does, as much and as progressive as mine is, it's going to affect everyone you're around. It's going to affect everyone you're close to. Just in just little everyday things, limitations, things that you don't think of. Finding parking close up, even if you do have a handicap placard, it's not always so easy. Being handicapped and then participating in things it's not so easy. It's why you don't see us out and about. We're all holed up in our houses. You don't see us so much out and about doing things because it's just not so easy. And for a long time too, I didn't drive. I didn't feel like it was safe. Especially when my vision was blurry, but even after that, like muscle spasticity, you don't want to have your right leg go vroom on the gas pedal, or not be able to hit the brakes. You don't want that. And I thought to myself, if I ever hurt somebody and I could have made the decision not to drive because I knew I was compromised because of this disease, I could never forgive myself. Even if I hit a dog. Of course, if I hit a dog. If I hit anybody, it caused anybody anything. So I didn't allow myself to drive during those times. So anyway, I digress. So after the fiance left, I moved in with my dad for a little bit on the same property. There was a house on that property, and there was a big barn with a big apartment above the barn. That's where I had lived with my fiance. Then I moved in with my dad for a little bit. And then after that, I was able to move into the apartment above the barn again, but this time with my mom. And I lived with her until she passed away in 2015. And the reason I say that is because I realized later, and sometimes I still am realizing it, that wow, I was super sheltered from everything that was going on. I was super sheltered from how promiscuous, women my age were, in their 20s if they hadn't gotten married, just because a lot of my high school friends, married their college sweethearts or their high school sweethearts. But I had no idea what was going on, in places like California and New York and even the city. I had no idea, or even people that weren't in my friend group. I had no idea. I didn't learn about the carousel until, 2016. I had no idea. I had no idea about foodie calls and the dating in the 2000s. I had no clue because I didn't do it. Because I said, no, I'm done. I'm just going to give riding lessons and teach and take care of animals, and that's my lot in life, and that'll be fine. And I will be grateful for that. And so I wasn't dating. I wasn't doing any of that. I wasn't even near my friends because of where we had moved to. Nobody I grew up with was around there, and I didn't make new friends. The only so-called friends I had were like students or people who owned horses and kept them with me. So I saw them at the barn, and then after I was done in the barn, I was back up to the apartment, and I was just like dead. I gave everything I had to teaching and taking care of horses. And back then I could still do some riding and actual physical training. But that was quickly going, quickly leaving me. By 2004, 2005, I really wasn't riding much anymore. So it was almost all instruction. 2006, 2007, definitely wasn't riding very much. I think I made a point to get in the show arena again in 2008 or 2009, something like that. But it was very, very basic and easy. So, it was aggressive and it was progressing, and, intermittently I was getting giant steroid infusions. I was injecting myself every other day. I did that for the first 5 years. And then for the next 4 years. So every other day for the first 5 years, and then every day, different medication, injections every night. And, you have to take Tylenol or you'll get flu symptoms. And so these medicines make you sick anyway. So you're just sick every dang day of your life, basically. And this humbles you. You're not over there thinking, I deserve this and I'm going to have this. And it creates a different mindset. It absolutely creates a different mindset. And I think too, and I've heard this, that when a person has suffered, especially something that is not a consequence of their actions, but just, life or an injustice, that it's an injustice that they're suffering, it helps you see suffering in others and empathize with them. So I know what it's like and it's different. I know it's different than what you guys are experiencing with the women's, with the divorces and the never been married because there's, no wives out there. I know what it's like to be alone. I know what it's like to wonder what it's for. To think, wow, it'd be, why am I here? Kind of an idea. I'm trying not to say anything that's going to upset YouTube. But you guys know what I mean. When people say, oh, you're so loved, people would miss you. People would be sad. And I know what it's like to think, no, they wouldn't. They don't really care. And at the end of the day, they'll be glad. And I've battled those demons myself. And to this day, sometimes I battle them. I win because I made I made a decision a long time ago that I was not going to do that, as it's not mine to take. This life is what God gave me, and I am here for a reason. If I'm here for a reason. And when my mom died, that was a real challenge, because I thought, well, how am I going to possibly do this? I can't even do my own laundry. I can't take care of myself. I didn't know. It was terrifying. And it was very lonely, because people can say what they say, but when it's nighttime and you're alone, those people aren't there. And I wasn't mad at them. Like, people have their own lives and their own struggles and their own issues. So they don't see they always, when somebody does an unaliving of themselves, people are always like, oh my God, I was so shocked. I had no idea. I was such a happy person. It's like, yeah, well, you were looking at how they acted and not looking at their circumstances and imagining what that might be like, because you have no idea. I have an idea. So I think it has shaped me. It has made it so that it doesn't matter how good I am, like, every day is going to be a challenge. Every day I'm going to suffer. A lot of times I'm going to have plans to do something, and MS is going to say, no, you're not. No, you're not. It's why I didn't make a video Saturday or Sunday. I was so exhausted. I couldn't, even formulate a thought. The idea of formulating a thought was exhausting. I don't know if any of this is making sense. But I did have a gentleman say to me once, and I really respect his opinion. He said that MS had tempered me. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was explaining a lot of what I'm explaining to you. It's pretty hard to be all uppity and nasty and stuff when you go through what I go through. Now, some people make that choice to be nasty and bitter and blame everybody and complain all the time. I know there are those people. That's why I don't go to support groups, like MS support groups, because it's a big giant pity party. And I'm not interested in a pity party. I already know it sucks. I don't need you to tell me. Like, let's talk about what is joyful or what has worked or etc. Like, let's not sit here and talk about how bad it sucks. Like, I feel like that just gives more power to it. And that's like raising a white flag. But that's beside the point. So I know that that's the case. However, when I would have those moments, particularly in the beginning, here, let me take a drink. Particularly in the beginning, when I would sort of be a little, irritated, testy, especially if I'm on steroids, it was even harder to, not be, short with people. My mother said to me in the presence of my sister, because we were with each other a lot, we were doing the horse stuff together, she said, being sick doesn't give you the right to be an a-hole. And I was like, at first I'm like, oh, how dare you? And I was like, at first I was like, that mentality, like, how dare you? Like, I am sick, how dare you call me an asshole? But I was like, yeah, no, nothing does. Nothing gives you the right to be that. And I never forgot that. And I was like, I don't want to be that. And I kind of saw myself, and I saw that I was giving in to that, like, oh, I'm angry at this, so I'm just gonna lash out and be short with people and be irritated, whatever. And she said that, and I instantly had a self-correction. And she's 100% right. Nothing gives you an excuse to be that. And so I've always, regardless of what I am going through, I do not want to take that out on other people. And it's funny because a lot of women are like, they have PMS and they think that gives them the right to act however they want because they have PMS and you should just act accordingly. And first of all, I was never taught that that was the thing. So I was taught that you act properly and there's no reason not to. There's no excuse not to. So it helped that I had that going into this. But yeah, it has tempered me. I never thought life is fair. I was not raised to think life is fair. I was not raised to think that I deserved any certain outcomes or what have you. I was already not raised to believe in those things. Like I deserve this or what have you. Like, no, you don't. Anyway, so it does. It tempers a person. And it can help you to have more empathy and compassion for others who are suffering and in their darkest of times. I'm glad if that is how it has affected me. If it has helped me understand you guys, understand men, and kept me out of any social scenes. However, like I said, I wasn't sorry. This all got messed up. Sorry. I was never, like when I was in college before I dropped out, I never went to a party. I never had one drink. I went to class. I worked and I rode on the equestrian team, and I went home on the weekends to ride my horses and see my family. That's what I did. I never, I had a boyfriend my freshman year, and then, we broke up because he was not marriage minded, and I was single my sophomore year. So I never dated or did any kind of partying or knew any of it actually disgusted me, that whole scene. So, and in high school, I had one boyfriend for, sophomore, junior, senior year, and then freshman year I had one boyfriend. And, I didn't, I was never interested in that. That was never who I was. So it isn't like I was doing all that and MS took me out of it. It almost drove me further under the rock, so to speak. So I was completely clueless about the party scene, like what people were actually doing, no idea. Didn't learn it until, I had to crawl out from underneath the rock because I literally didn't have my mom to help take care of me anymore. So I had to figure that all out and didn't have a clue that the government would actually, help as much as they do. I had no idea. I didn't grow up thinking this is what, the government is for, or somebody will save you. That isn't your family or a friend. I never knew that. I was not from, I didn't ever know people who were on welfare. I didn't know really how food stamps even worked. I'd heard of food stamps. I didn't know, are they like stamps? What are they? I had no idea. Clueless. So I didn't look to the government to help support me or, do anything like that. I had Medicaid. I did have Medicaid. I knew that. And I had Medicare, because you get Medicare if you're disabled. And I got like a SSI check because I did, file for disability. And I got it first try because they're like, oh girl, you bad. So they gave it to me because usually that's not how it is. And no, I didn't have an attorney, but that is how sick I was. So I moved in with friends, and some of you are probably like, well, what happened to your dad? Well, he said no. I asked if he would help me. I was in the hospital, found out about my mom's prognosis. It was dire. It was 6 months to a year. And I asked him if he would help me, at least until, I could sell the house that we had been living in and move in with a friend. He said no. He gave me the teach a man to fish. And I said, well, what if you don't have a pole or your arms won't hold the pole? No. Anyway, so I had to figure it out. And that whole ride, the last 8 years or so, because she passed at the end of 15, has been a whole other deal. And that's when the awakening to all of this stuff began, because I crawled out from underneath my rock and I was like, what in the world's going on out here? This is not what I thought things were. This is not how I thought people acted. I didn't know that women were, I knew how my mom treated my dad when they were married. I knew that, but I did not know, how church women really acted. Or I thought okay, I'll leave you with this. I thought that their Facebook posts and stuff were real. I didn't know that everybody was just putting on an act and just trying to look good. Like, I didn't know that. So incredibly naive, so incredibly sheltered. Because in a way, I never really moved out of my house. I never really moved away from home in a way, because it was like high school, college, got engaged, lived in sin with him for a few years, moved back in with my dad, then in with my mom. I've never until like last year, never been completely out on my own. It's very odd. But that, I realized MS sort of did shelter me because I was too busy dealing with all this to know what humans really do to each other and what the women were really doing and how the men were really suffering. I had no idea. But as soon as I started to find out, it started to make a lot of sense. And I started looking back on my life and my dad and my parents' divorce and all of that. And it made a lot more sense to me that I knew that what I had stumbled upon with what y'all are going through was real. And I needed to say something. I just always have wanted to stand up for people who didn't have anyone or didn't have a voice or were misunderstood. And so I started my channel in 2020. And the MS still helps. Like I said, it helps inform me, because I know what suffering is, and I know what it's like to be robbed of your life. I know what it's like to say, okay, this is what I'm going to go and do. And you do all the right things. And you do, and next thing you know, nope, that's not going to be what it is. That's not going to be your life. And the men have had that happen to them when they either couldn't find a wife. There's a man who commented the other day. I just read his comment not that long ago. And he said that, he saved up the money. He wanted a wife and children. And he worked hard and he had a house and everything. And he never could find a wife. So he never did have the children. Never had the wife or the kids. It's like, what did he do wrong? Nothing. Nothing. And yet, this is the sentence that he is living out. And so many of you are living out sentences that you didn't commit any crimes. You just wanted some babies. And a woman who was nice, and loyal. Like, you're not asking for much. Not asking for much. But even that's too much to ask. So, I don't know. So this is the whole MS story. I know that I am sure I have skipped over plots. I was talking about, doing a flashback, and we did a bit of a flashback about the fiance, but the flashback is that I've had this since I was a kid. I just was raised not to complain and not to be a baby. And so I didn't, and I wasn't, and you'd get in trouble if you complained. You get fussed at for feeling sorry for yourself, which good. I'm not sorry about that. But yeah, neither one of my parents would have it. There'd be no feeling sorry for yourself. There'd be no, and yeah, I get it. We were kids. We were like kids. Imagine telling a 5-year-old, like, don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't complain. But they just didn't want to have, didn't want me to be a whiner. And I look back, I'm like, man, that was harsh. But geez, though, sure did make me strong for this. Because there are days, I let myself feel sorry for myself for a little bit, wimpy, not to be a whiner. So I'm glad they did. Because otherwise I wouldn't have been strong enough to go through the things that I've gone through and still go through every day. And who knows what I'll go through in the future. Just to face that is enough. So thanks for listening. Sorry, I don't know. It's awkward to talk about myself, but it's part of the story. It's part of it. And we'll talk about things, as we go, but this is the story. Anyway, it's uncomfortable. So thank you guys, and I want you to take care of yourselves, and I love you all, and I will see you on the next one.